You're pathetic. You know that? The words still echoed in her mind. Vincent Romano had cornered her in the supply room 20 minutes ago, his breath hot against her face as he'd backed her against the shelves. She'd been reaching for printer paper, something so mundane, so normal, when he'd appeared behind her like a shadow. A nobody playing assistant to kings, he'd sneered, his fingers gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. Did you really think you belonged here? That any of us see you as anything more than decoration? She'd tried to pull away, but Vincent was Marco's business partner, untouchable in the hierarchy of the Costello Empire. When she'd finally wrenched her arm free and fled, his laughter had followed her down the corridor. Now she stood frozen, knowing she had exactly 3 minutes before Marco's afternoon meeting. 3 minutes to compose herself, to hide the evidence of her humiliation, to become invisible again. The office door swung open. "Sophia!" Marco Costello's voice cut through her panic like a blade. "Inside. Now!" Her breath caught. Of course he'd noticed she was late. Marco noticed everything, every detail, every deviation from routine, every weakness in his empire. It was what made him the most feared man in the city's underworld, and what made working for him both thrilling and terrifying. Before we continue, please subscribe. My mom says I can't reach 1,000 subscribers, so prove her wrong. Okay, let's get back to it. She stepped into the office, keeping her head down, praying he wouldn't look too closely. "The Patterson contracts," she began, her voice barely steady. "Look at me." 2 words. Soft, almost gentle, but carrying the weight of a command that couldn't be refused. Sophia raised her eyes slowly, reluctantly, and met Marco's gaze across the expanse of his desk. He stood silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows, the afternoon sun turning his dark hair almost black, his tailored suit fitting him like armor. At 47, Marco Costello was everything the rumors said. Ruthless, brilliant, devastatingly handsome, and completely untouchable. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then his expression changed. The cool mask of indifference cracked, revealing something dark and dangerous beneath. His jaw tightened. His hands, resting on the desk, slowly curled into fists. "Who the fuck made you cry?" The profanity shocked her. Marco was always controlled, always measured. She'd worked as his personal assistant for 8 months and never heard him lose his composure. "It's nothing," she whispered. "I'm fine, Mr. Costello. The contracts are ready for your review, and I've confirmed your dinner meeting with Sophia." He was moving now, rounding the desk with the fluid grace of a predator. "I asked you a question." She stepped back instinctively, but there was nowhere to go. The door was behind her, and Marco was advancing, his dark eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her skin flush. It's not important. Someone hurt you." It wasn't a question. His hand reached out, fingers catching her chin with surprising gentleness, tilting her face toward the light. "Someone in my building, under my roof, made you cry." The touch sent electricity through her. In 8 months, Marco had never touched her beyond the occasional brush of fingers when passing documents. He maintained rigid boundaries with everyone, a wall of ice that kept the world at a safe distance. But now his thumb was tracing the path of her dried tears, and his expression was murderous. "Tell me who." "I can't." The words escaped before she could stop them. "Mr. Costello, please, I just need a minute to—" "Was it Vincent?" Her sharp intake of breath was answer enough. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marco's hand fell away from her face, but he didn't step back. Instead, he pulled out his phone with movements that were terrifyingly calm. "Cancel my afternoon meetings," he said into the phone, his eyes never leaving hers. "All of them. And tell Vincent I want to see him in my office." "Immediately." "No!" Sophia grabbed his arm without thinking, her fingers wrapping around the expensive fabric of his sleeve. "Please, you can't. He'll know I told you, and he's your partner. I can't come between—" "Sophia." Marco's free hand covered hers, holding it against his arm. What did he do? The gentleness in his voice broke something inside her. All the months of being strong, of being invisible, of swallowing every insult and indignity to keep this job she desperately needed. It all came crashing down. He said I didn't belong here, she whispered. That I was nothing. Just decoration. He grabbed my wrist, backed me into the corner, and told me I should be grateful any of you even notice I exist. Marco's expression didn't change, but she felt his whole body go rigid beneath her touch. Show me your wrist. She hesitated, then slowly pulled up her sleeve. The bruises were already forming, dark purple fingerprints against her pale skin. For a long moment, Marco just stared at the marks. Then he raised her wrist to his lips and pressed the softest kiss against the bruised skin. Sophia's heart stopped. No one touches what's mine, he said quietly. No one. Before she could process those words, the office door burst open. Vincent Romano strode in with his characteristic arrogance, his expensive watch glinting as he spread his hands. Marco, what's this about? I've got the union guys waiting in conference room B and... He stopped when he saw Sophia, and his expression shifted to something ugly. Oh, I see. The little assistant went crying to Daddy, did she? Vincent's smile was cruel. Marco, I don't know what she told you, but you know how women are. Emotional. Dramatic. She probably... Get out. Vincent blinked. What? You have 10 seconds to get out of this building, out of this city, and out of my sight before I forget we've known each other for 20 years. The smile faded from Vincent's face. You can't be serious. Over her. She's just an assistant, Marco. She's nobody. 9 seconds. We built this empire together. You need me. The connections. The deals with the East Coast families. 8 seconds. Marco's voice was deadly calm. And Sophia isn't just anything. She's the woman who makes sure this entire operation runs smoothly, while men like you take credit for her work. She's the one who caught the accounting discrepancy that saved us $3 million last quarter. She's the person who remembers every detail, every commitment, every vulnerability in our organization. Sophia stared at him in shock. She hadn't known he noticed any of that. 7 seconds, Marco continued, taking a step forward. She's also, apparently, the woman you thought you could assault in my building without consequences. Assault? Vincent's laugh was harsh. I barely touched her. If you're going to throw away our partnership over 6 seconds, 5, 4. Marco, be reasonable. 3. Vincent's face flushed red. Fine, but you're making a mistake. When the Salvatores find out you chose some random girl over your oldest ally. 2. Vincent turned and strode toward the door, but Marco's next words stopped him cold. One more thing, Vincent. If I ever hear you've spoken to Sophia again, looked at her, or even thought about her, I won't count. I'll just kill you. The silence that followed was deafening. Vincent left without another word. Sophia stood frozen in the center of Marco's office, her mind reeling. She'd just witnessed a man being exiled from a criminal empire. For her. Because of her. Mr. Costello, I don't know what to say. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. He was standing close again, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I should have done it months ago. I don't understand. Don't you? His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. 8 months, Sophia. 8 months of watching you, wanting you, telling myself I couldn't have you because you work for me, because you're 20 years younger, because getting close to me puts a target on your back. Her breath caught. You wanted me? Want, present tense. His other hand settled on her waist, pulling her closer. Do you know how many times I've sat at that desk and imagined pulling you into my lap? How many nights I've gone home thinking about your smile, your laugh, the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. Marco. It was the first time she'd used his first name, and the sound of it seemed to ignite something in him. I told myself I was protecting you by keeping my distance, he continued, his voice rough, that the best thing I could do was stay away. Let you live a normal life, free from this world. But watching Vincent put his hands on you, seeing you cry because someone in my organization made you feel small, he broke off, jaw clenching. I'm done staying away, he finished. If you'll have me. Sophia's mind was spinning. This couldn't be real. Men like Marco Costello didn't want women like her. Ordinary, unremarkable, struggling to pay off student loans for a degree she'd never finished. She was supposed to be invisible, but the way he was looking at her now made her feel like the most visible person in the world. I'm not part of your world, she managed. I don't know how to navigate this life. The danger, the violence, the constant threat. I know. His forehead touched hers. That's one of the things I love about you. You're real, Sophia. You're honest and kind and brilliant, and you don't belong in the darkness. But I'm selfish enough to want you anyway. This is crazy. But even as she said it, her hands were sliding up his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the expensive fabric. Probably. The ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Does that mean no? She thought about Vincent's sneer, his casual cruelty, the way he'd made her feel worthless. Then she thought about Marco's fury on her behalf, the tenderness in his touch, the way he'd defended her without hesitation. I could lose my job, she whispered. You could gain a husband. The world tilted. What? Marco pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. I don't do things halfway, Sophia. If we cross this line, I'm all in, completely, permanently. I want you in my life, in my bed, wearing my ring. I want everyone in this city to know you're mine, and that touching you means death. She struggled to find words. That's insane. We haven't even been on a date. Then let me take you to dinner tonight. Tomorrow night. Every night. His hands tightened on her waist. Let me court you properly. Show you what it means to be cherished by a man who would burn the world down to keep you safe. You just exiled your business partner for me. I should have done worse. Sophia laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. You're serious. You're actually serious about this. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Marco's expression softened. But I need to hear it from you, Sophia. Tell me you feel this too. Tell me I'm not alone in this madness. She thought about the 8 months of stolen glances, the electricity she felt every time he was near, the way her heart raced when he said her name. She'd told herself it was foolish, that men like Marco didn't notice women like her. But he had noticed. He'd been watching her the same way she'd been watching him. I feel it, she admitted quietly. I felt it since the first week I started working for you. But Marco, I'm scared. Your world will never touch you, he interrupted fiercely. Not in a way that harms you. Yes, there's danger. Yes, there are enemies. But they'll have to go through me to reach you, and I promise you, no one is that stupid. Vincent seemed pretty stupid. Vincent is currently running for his life, and if he's smart, he'll keep running. Marco's thumb traced her lower lip. Say yes, Sophia. Say you'll give us a chance. She looked into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability beneath the dangerous exterior. This man who commanded respect and fear from everyone around him was asking her, almost begging her, to take a leap of faith. Yes, she breathed. The kiss was inevitable. Marco's mouth captured hers with a hunger that made her knees weak, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pressed her body against his. She melted into him, 8 months of suppressed desire igniting all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marco rested his forehead against hers. You're mine now, he murmured. Everyone in this building, this city, this entire network is going to know it. How? She was still dizzy from the kiss. A slow smile spread across his face, not the cold expression he showed the world, but something warm and possessive and utterly devastating. Come with me. He took her hand and led her out of the office, through the corridors of the Costello building, where employees quickly stepped aside, their eyes widening at the sight of their boss holding his assistant's hand. They rode the elevator down to the main conference level, where, Marco had mentioned earlier, important meetings were taking place. "Marco, wait." Sophia tried to slow down, suddenly conscious of her tear-stained face and wrinkled blouse. But he was already pushing open the doors to Conference Room A, where a dozen men in expensive suits sat around a mahogany table. She recognized some of them, heads of various operations, family representatives, men whose names appeared in newspapers with disturbing regularity. Every conversation stopped. "Gentlemen," Marco said calmly, his arm sliding around Sophia's waist. "I wanted to introduce you to Sophia Hayes. Some of you know her as my assistant. From this moment forward, you'll know her as my future wife." The silence was absolute. Sophia felt her face flame red, but Marco's arm was steady around her, anchoring her. "Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me," he continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Anyone who threatens her signs their own death warrant. Anyone who makes her uncomfortable in any way will answer to me personally. Are we clear?" A chorus of, "Yes, Mr. Costello," filled the room. One of the older men, Sophia recognized him as Giovanni Marconi, head of the dock operations, stood up with a broad smile. "It's about time you settled down, Marco. The lady must be something special." "She is." Marco pressed a kiss to Sophia's temple, a gesture so tender and public it made her breath catch. "Which is why I wanted to make sure everyone understood the situation from the beginning." "Does this mean we should expect a wedding invitation?" another man asked, grinning. "Soon," Marco confirmed, and Sophia's heart stuttered. "Very soon." He guided her back out of the conference room before she could process what had just happened. In the hallway, she turned to face him, overwhelmed. "You just announced our engagement to the entire leadership council," she said faintly. "I did. We've been together for approximately 10 minutes. 12, but who's counting?" His eyes danced with amusement. "Too fast?" She should say yes. She should be terrified. This was insane, impulsive, completely irrational. But when she looked at Marco, really looked at him, she saw something that made her heart swell. He wasn't just claiming her for show or possession. He was protecting her in the most absolute way he knew how, using his power and position to create a shield around her that no one would dare cross. "My mother is going to think I've lost my mind," she said finally. "I'll win her over. I can be charming when necessary." "You're a Mafia boss." "Allegedly," he grinned. "Officially, I'm a legitimate businessman with diverse holdings." "Marco, Sophia." He caught both her hands, suddenly serious. "I know this is fast. I know I'm asking you to leap into the unknown. But I meant what I said in my office. I'm all in, completely committed. And I'll spend every day proving to you that this wasn't a mistake." She thought about the morning she'd walked into her interview 8 months ago, terrified and desperate for a job that paid enough to keep her tiny apartment. She'd been invisible then, or so she'd thought. But Marco had seen her. He'd noticed her work, her intelligence, the small things she did that kept his empire running smoothly. And somewhere along the way, he'd fallen for her. "I have conditions," she said finally. Hope flared in his eyes. "Name them." "I'm not quitting my job. I like working with you, and I'm good at it." "Agreed. Though we might need to adjust your title. Assistant to the CEO and future Mrs. Costello is a bit of a mouthful." "I'm serious, Marco." "So am I." He squeezed her hands. "What else?" "I want to meet your family. All of them. If I'm going to be part of this world, I need to understand it." "Done. Sunday dinner with my mother and sisters. Fair warning, they're going to love you and immediately start planning the wedding. And," she hesitated, then forged ahead, "I want honesty about everything. The business, the danger, what being with you really means. No sugarcoating it to protect me." Marco's expression grew serious. "That one's harder. Some things I can't tell you, for legal reasons as much as safety. But I swear I'll never lie to you, Sophia. If I can't answer a question, I'll say so. Fair? She nodded slowly. Fair. Is that all? One more thing. She looked up at him through her lashes. Take me to dinner tonight. A real date. Somewhere normal where we can talk without interruption. The smile that crossed his face was radiant. I know just the place. That evening, Marco picked her up from her apartment in a sleek black car that probably cost more than she'd earn in 5 years. But instead of taking her to some exclusive restaurant, he drove to a small Italian place in Little Italy, family-owned and unpretentious. Mama Rosa makes the best carbonara in the city, he explained as they walked inside, and she's known me since I was 15 and trying to run numbers for the local bookies. An elderly woman bustled over, her face lighting up when she saw Marco. Then her eyes landed on Sophia, and her expression transformed into pure delight. Marco, finally, you bring a girl. She grabbed Sophia's face between her hands, studying her intently. Beautiful. Smart eyes? Good. You need smart woman, not just pretty face. Mama Rosa, this is Sophia, Marco said, his hand settling possessively on Sophia's back. Sophia, this is the woman who fed me when my own mother was too busy with my sisters. He was so skinny, Mama Rosa exclaimed. All elbows and attitude. Now look, handsome, powerful, still won't eat enough vegetables. Sophia couldn't help but laugh. This was a side of Marco she'd never seen. Relaxed, almost boyish, as Mama Rosa fussed over them and led them to a quiet corner table. Over wine and the promised carbonara they talked. Really talked for the first time without the barrier of professional distance. Marco told her about growing up in the organization, the weight of expectations, the moment he'd decided to either embrace the family business or run from it. I chose to stay, he said quietly, not because I wanted power, but because I knew if someone like me didn't take control, someone worse would. The violence, the exploitation. I've worked for 20 years to minimize it, to make the organization less about destruction and more about protection. Like a Robin Hood Mafia boss? Sophia teased gently. More like a necessary evil trying to be less evil. He caught her hand across the table. I'm not a good man, Sophia. I want you to understand that. I've done things, ordered things, that would horrify you. To protect people? Sometimes. Other times because it was business, or survival, or the least bad option. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I can't promise you a clean conscience or a peaceful life, but I can promise you'll never doubt my loyalty, my protection, or my love. Love. He'd said it so casually, as if it was already an established fact. You love me? She asked softly. I do. No hesitation. I think I started falling for you the second week you worked for me. You corrected my grammar in a memo. She laughed, remembering. You'd written less people instead of fewer people. It was bothering me. Most people are terrified to correct me. You just fixed it and moved on like it was nothing. His eyes were warm in the candlelight. That's when I knew you were different. Brave without realizing it. Real in a world of people wearing masks. I was terrified, she admitted. I just needed the job too badly to let fear stop me. See? Brave. He raised her hand to his lips. So, Sophia Hayes. Soon to be Sophia Costello. What do you say? Ready to take on the world with a morally complicated mafia boss who's completely devoted to you? She thought about her old life, the struggle, the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible. Then she thought about the way Marco looked at her, like she was the center of his universe, the way he'd defended her without question, the future he was offering, dangerous and uncertain but filled with passion and purpose. I'm terrified, she said honestly. But yes, I'm ready. His smile could have powered the entire city. 3 months later, Sophia stood in front of a mirror in an antique white dress, her hands shaking slightly as Marco's youngest sister adjusted her veil. You look like a princess, Isabella said warmly. "Marco's going to lose his mind when he sees you." Through the window, Sophia could see the garden where chairs were arranged in neat rows, filled with people from both her old life and her new one. Her mother sat in the front row, next to Marco's mother, the two women chatting like old friends. It had taken exactly one dinner for Mrs. Costello to adopt Sophia completely. 2 minutes, someone called. Sophia took a deep breath. In the past 3 months, her life had transformed completely. She'd learned to navigate the complex world of the Costello organization, earning respect not through fear but through competence and Marco's unwavering support. She'd faced down hostile family members, survived her first business dinner with rival organizations, and discovered she had a talent for strategy that made her invaluable to Marco's operations. But more than that, she'd fallen completely in love with the man who defended her honor without hesitation, who brought her coffee every morning, who listened to her ideas and implemented the good ones, who made her feel seen and cherished every single day. The music started. Sophia walked down the aisle on her father's arm, but her eyes were only for Marco. He stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, and when he saw her, his expression transformed. Awe, love, and possessive pride all mixed together. When she reached him, he took her hand and whispered, "Most beautiful thing I've ever seen." The ceremony passed in a blur. She heard herself say, "I do." Heard Marco's voice, strong and certain, claiming her as his wife. And then he was kissing her, and the crowd was cheering, and her new life was beginning. At the reception, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Marco pulled her close. "Any regrets?" he murmured against her ear. She thought about that day in his office, tear-stained and broken. Then she thought about everything that had come after, the protection, the passion, the partnership. "Not a single one," she said honestly. "You? Only that I didn't claim you sooner." He spun her gently. "I love you, Sophia Costello." "I love you too, Marco, my dangerous, devoted, surprisingly romantic Mafia boss." He laughed, a sound of pure joy that made her heart soar. Later, as the party continued around them, Vincent Romano's name came up in conversation. Someone had heard he'd fled to South America, never to be heard from again. "Good riddance," one of Marco's cousins said. "Never liked that guy anyway." Marco's arm tightened around Sophia's waist, and she knew he was remembering that day, the moment everything had changed. "Best decision I ever made," he said quietly, just for her. "Choosing you over him, over everything." "You didn't just choose me," Sophia corrected, looking up at her husband with eyes full of love. "You chose us, our future, our life together. And I'd make the same choice every single time." As the celebration continued around them, Sophia reflected on how far she'd come from that terrified, invisible woman in the supply room. She'd found her voice, her strength, and her place in a world she never expected to inhabit. But most importantly, she'd found a man who saw her, truly saw her, and loved her not despite her vulnerability, but because of it. Because she'd brought light into his darkness and showed him that even in the shadows, love could bloom. And that, she thought as Marco kissed her temple and whispered another promise of devotion, was the most dangerous and beautiful thing of all.